why do you think this this election is so important? And as an editorial writer, I know you're comfortable in dealing with opinion. So why should students be involved in this process of choosing the next president?
You know, not only do you obviously have the war going on in Iraq and the war on terrorism and what's going on in Afghanistan, but we have a very perilous economic situation. The country's probably in a recession. And so a lot of your futures depends on what we do over the next 4 or 8 years, and how much debt we're going to leave you and our grandchildren, what type of world we're going to see, the United States' place in the world, and whether we're going to effectively use our soft power as well as our military hard power. A lot of big questions at stake now.
Okay, knowing this, it's increasingly looking like it might be Obama McCain in the general election. How can a student get informed now from scratch, zero?
I would say there are maybe 4 or 5 things students have to do. The first thing is you have to work at it. You have to be aware of it. You have to understand the process. You have to understand, for instance, in the general election, it's not about the popular vote, and it's about the electoral vote, as we found out in 2000. You have to pay attention to the types of issues the candidates are dealing with, the difference between character issues, substantive issues. The press tends to pay a lot of attention to the tactics of politics. So it's up to students to be aware of what they're watching and also understand the role of polling in politics. And what I always say, polls are a snapshot in time. They're not predictors. You shouldn't rely too much on polls. They can be helpful, but they're not be-all and end-all. And then recognize the difference between advertising and news. We'll be bombarded, especially if you're in a closed state, with advertising messages. And the great thing about the internet now is you can go on the internet and have sites like politifact.com or factcheck.org, which will take a campaign commercial, analyze it, and say this part's true, this part's not true, this is half true, this is completely false. So you can work at it and find out what's going on, but it takes some work.
What would you say would be other better ways to get your news, not so good ways to get your news?
I don't think there's one good way of getting your news. I mean, obviously, if you read the New York Times, that's better than reading the National Enquirer. But I think you have to use multiple sources, and you can certainly do that online now. You can go, there are a site, you can read the New York Times and NewYorkTimes.com. You can go to a news site called Politico.com. One of the sites that I frequently use is called Real Clear Politics, which gives you a listing of all the good stories, interesting stories from all sides of the political spectrum that ran in a particular news cycle, not day but a news cycle. It's the morning cycle, the afternoon, the evening cycle, and it's a good way to keep up with things. So they would include news and commentary, and they'll give you the latest polls. But I would say use multiple sources. Don't depend on just one source.
It's actually a question I was going to ask you later. Real Clear Politics, I like it. I think we've talked about in class aggregators. There's some sites that are aggregators and just get all the links from different spots, and I think that's a good one. But what about your take on blogs and commentary on TV?
I think you have to be aware. As long as you're aware that you're hearing commentary, that you're getting opinion, that's one of the other things you have to be sensitive to. There's a difference between news and opinion. And there's nothing wrong with opinion expressed, especially if the person expressing the opinion is backing it up with facts and figures and other sources. What you have to understand is some of the people you'll see on TV are partisans. In fact, a lot of them are partisans, working for one candidate or another. And television doesn't always do a good job of identifying who is who. So you have to kind of work at it and be aware. So first, understand the difference between news and opinion, but then even within opinion, understand who is an analyst and doesn't have a particular axe to grind, and who's working for a candidate.